Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Mini Clinics with Mitch. My name is Mitch Braley, and I'm a member of Racquetball Canada's National Development Team, welcoming you to the first video in a series of virtual mini clinics on behalf of Racquetball Canada. We wanted to develop a series of weekly videos to provide you with some tools and exercises to help improve your racquetball game while COVID continues to see courts close across the country along with gyms. As such, everything we'll be covering in the coming weeks requires minimal equipment and can all be done at home. I thought the best way to kick off this series would be a discussion on goal setting and self-assessment. This is going to help provide some further purpose and motivation for the videos we'll have for you in coming weeks. So let's get started by taking a closer look at why we're setting goals. We hear the term so often that I think it's really easy to become desensitized to it, but it's important to understand the power of meaningful goal setting. If you ask any successful person, from a pro athlete to a CEO, even to musicians, most, if not all, will speak to the importance of goal setting. So for racquetball, it helps give us some focus and direction in our training. Having a clear picture of what we'd like to accomplish is going to make it easier to figure out our training routine. There's also the benefit of seeing increased motivation just from a desire to succeed in what we're setting out to do. And lastly, goals also help keep us accountable as to whether or not we're putting in the proper work to inch closer towards reaching them. So your goals might be very different from those around you. Some might be quite ambitious, such as wanting to win your age division at nationals. On a slightly different note, you may want to improve from a C player to a B player by the end of next year. And it can even be as simple as wanting to beat your friend for the first time who you've never won a game against before. And regardless of what your individual goal is, it's our hopes that we can help you reach them. Now, as important as it is to set a goal, it's equally as important to structure it for maximum effectiveness. You've probably heard of SMART goals before, and there is a reason for that, and it's because they work really well. We're going to dig a bit deeper into what exactly goes into setting a SMART goal through the use of an example. So this is my friend. This is Racquetball Ralph. And last season, he won the B division in every tournament he entered, and he's decided he wants to start playing in the A division in the upcoming season. He can win the odd game against A-level players, but more often than not, he's losing to them, although the scores are usually fairly close. So take a moment here, pause the video if you want to, or come back to it, and think about your game from a very general perspective. So what's your current skill level? Who are some of the players you're normally losing to? Who are some players who you're very close with, but feel like a couple of improvements would put you over the top? We're going to get into some more details shortly. So for Ralph, he knows he wants to improve, so he sets his goal to be, I want to be a better racquetball player. And I do want to say that it's great to have the ambition to want to become better at something, not just in racquetball, but in your career or in a hobby or in a relationship or something else personal in your life. But this type of phrasing is really vague, and it's not going to help him very much as a well-defined SMART goal would. So working to reshape his goal, he comes up with, I will win the A division at my 2022 provincial championships. And this covers all the criteria of a SMART goal. It's specific, the phrasing very clear, and it can't be misinterpreted. It is measurable. He's going to know if he's reached a goal by winning the tournament. If he doesn't win the tournament, then he's fallen short of his goal. The measurement process won't always be this binary and simple. So if you had the goal of improving your forehand, something centered around improving your forehand, you need to determine a system for how you measure and track it. Achievable? Yes, Ralph's playing at a mid-range A level already. He's eager to put in the work to improve and become one of the best, if not the best, A players in his province. Realistic, and again, the answer is yes. He's going to be playing in the appropriate skill division, the A division, at an event that he is going to be competing at that he knows is going to occur in the future, post-COVID. Timely or time-based. So again, it's important to have a firm start date and a firm end date. For Ralph, his start date is right now. For you, it may be different. And the end date will be the weekend his provincial championships take place, hopefully in the final. So now that we have a well-defined SMART goal, the next step is determining how we're going to get there. I talked about a start date a moment ago, but now we need to evaluate our starting point. I had asked you to pause earlier and consider a few general ideas about your game, but now it's time to dive in further. So you want to take an honest self-assessment of your strengths and weaknesses, along with how you can use your strengths to your advantage, how to strategize around your weaknesses, and how to improve your weaknesses. Here's an example of how to break down and analyze your strengths. So Ralph says that he has a great drive serve to the left side of the court. It's worth noting that unless you have a coach that you work with on a regular basis, the only person who can engage in this type of evaluation of your game will be you. So make sure you're as honest with yourself as possible. So when Ralph determines that having a great drive serve to the left is a strength, he should have some reasons to back it up. He's come up with a few points here. He notes that he rarely hits fault serves. He has great control of the height, speed, and angle of the serve, and the ball often bounces twice before the back wall when he wants it to. Now, it's awesome that he has this weapon at his disposal, but without having a way to use it properly, it won't do him much good. So the next step is figuring out how having this terrific drive serve can help him win more games. A handful of things he should keep in mind when devising his game plan. If he has such a high level of control, then he needs to ensure he's using it to mix up what he's hitting in order to prevent his opponents from getting comfortable. He should also be hyper-focused on following up his opponent's return with a really good third shot, especially on a weak return, in an effort to win what is commonly referred to as the three-shot rally. And on serves where he's aiming to have the ball bounce twice before the back wall, he knows he's going to have to react quickly, because if his opponent's returning it, they're not going to be waiting for it to come off the back wall, allowing him time to get into position. So Ralph's going to need to be really aware of how quickly and efficiently he's leaving the service box and preparing for his next shot. And by doing this, he'll have a much better chance of maintaining pressure on his opponent during the rally. Enough about Ralph. Now it's your turn. So feel free to pause the video again or come back to it later so you can analyze your own strengths. Now, just as we did before, you should be able to list the strength and give rationale behind it. So I've got another example here, this time with player's strength as being a down the line shot on their forehand side. So if you consider this to be something that applies to you as a strength, ask yourself, is the ball 2 feet or less from the side wall, maybe even less at a higher skill level? When you hit it most of the time, does the ball bounce twice before the back wall? Do you have enough power to get the ball by your opponent so they don't have time to easily step over and re-kill it? And if you can't answer yes to any of these questions, then perhaps it isn't a strength after all, but rather an area you need to improve on. And next, decide how you work each individual strength into your game plan. It's great to have the tools, but not knowing how to use them isn't going to get you very far. If you find this challenging, then seek out a coach or some veteran players that may have some suggestions for you. And lastly, examine how you developed these current strengths. Was it through hours of practice? Did somebody give you a tip that resonated with you? Was it something that you intentionally worked on? So being able to reflect on this is going to help when it comes time to attacking your weaknesses in order to improve them. So speaking of weaknesses, it's time to take a look at yours. And this isn't always an easy process. It can be hard to take a step back and look at the gaps in your game with an objective lens. And it's important to realize that putting in the work to correct your weaknesses is one of the only ways to become a better player, and that being aware of what they are is the first step. So back to Ralph again, he came up with one for us to look at here. And as you can see, he says he struggles to hit good shots when cutting off lob serves with his backhand, often resulting in a skip or an easy setup for his opponent. There are two things to look at here. Ultimately, his goal should be to practice until there is no longer a weakness. However, these things don't typically happen overnight. I wish they did. Depending on the skill, it can take hours or weeks or even months of hard work to make the correct changes in your game. So he needs to find a way to minimize how his opponents exploit this. A few things he came up with are, he can focus on hitting really good ceiling balls and solid passing shots from the deep court in order to still put pressure on his opponent. He can ensure that when his opponent does hit a loose serve that results in a setup, it's more critical than ever to hit a quality offensive shot. The idea being that they'll switch to a different serve that doesn't require consistent short hopping to handle, thinking that he's really good at returning that particular serve when in reality they just missed it. Even if rarely, he should still make an effort to cut off a few serves with a wide variety of shots, so his opponent can't get comfortable always waiting for him to sit back so they can take a good center court position every time they hit that lob serve. Especially worth trying early in a game. So if he's able to hit a decent shot early, it might even force his opponent to switch to something else, giving him a chance to hide this hole in his game if they're not aware that it is one that exists for him. But again, being aware of your weaknesses and strategizing around them is a terrific way to improve your game, but ultimately, your objective should be to fix them. In this scenario, Ralph has a few options. So you can find a practice partner who can hit him tons of lob serves that he can practice cutting off, repetition, repetition, repetition. He can play practice games where his opponent agrees to hit only lob serves, and he agrees to cut off every single one of them, regardless of the quality of the serve. It's nice to have the pressure of a game to practice in, and there are plenty of creative ways to structure games like this to keep your training sessions fun. And of equal importance to the drills and the exercises is determining why you're having difficulties in the first place. So is it a problem with your swing? Is it your footwork, your timing, all of the above, like it is for me? I've mentioned coaches before, and this is another instance where it might take an experienced coach to identify where the issues are and how you can correct them. So I'm sure you've all figured out the pattern by now, but it's now time to analyze your own game. We're done with Ralph again, I think for the last time. Pause this video or come back to it later. So write down what your current weaknesses are and remember to be specific. It's not enough just to say my backhand or my drive serve. In Ralph's case, he didn't just say return a serve, but he went into further detail that are going to help lead to faster improvements. So next, figure out some ways you can build your strategy around these weaknesses so your opponents aren't able to exploit them. Another example, maybe you're not physically fit enough to grind out long rallies, so you plan to stick with lob serve since they're less taxing on the body than drive serve, for instance, and you aim to kill the ball more in an effort to keep rallies shorter and avoid getting tired. And in order to improve on something like this, you'll need to devise a proper strength and conditioning program in order to get into better shape, sticking with the example of not being good enough shape to withstand long rallies or matches. In the coming weeks, we're going to be touching on some exercises you can do at home to help you get into better shape or maintain your current fitness level. But it all leads back to exploring ways you can practice and continue to improve. Coaches are great, and there are also plenty of resources online and on YouTube to assist you as well. And hopefully these mini clinics we're doing are going to provide some useful ideas too. So that's all I have for today. And just to recap really briefly, create your SMART goal. And it's okay to have more than one, but be careful not to have too many or else you're going to spread your focus too thin. Usually it's best to accomplish one and then move on to the next one. But it is also okay to have several of them leading up to a primary one. For example, if you create a SMART goal centered around developing a really good ceiling ball, that might be part of your ultimate SMART goal, which would be winning your division at the Nationals. Also write it down. If you like, post it in multiple places, such as on your fridge or a sticky note on the back of your phone, somewhere that you'll be reminded of it regularly. Think about your game from a general perspective. It's just going to help provide some context when you explore things a bit further and as we go into the videos in the coming weeks. Analyze your strengths. Why do you consider them strength? How can you use them to win more games? Analyze your weaknesses. How can you game plan around them until you eventually improve them? Remember that no matter how great a player you become, you'll always have areas of your game that you can use improvement, which is part of what makes racquetball so dynamic and fun to play. And write all this down too. Typing on a computer is fine, but there is real evidence to support that the act of putting pen to paper creates a stronger connection in the brain. And perhaps most important of all is just have fun. Practice and training won't always be enjoyable, especially when you become frustrated trying to develop new skills. I'm no stranger to that myself. But at the end of the day, you should be having fun seeing your progress, bringing your game to new levels, and competing in the sport that you love. And if you're not doing that, then it's time to evaluate and figure out how you can get to that point. So I really hope you enjoyed this first mini clinic with Mitch. Again, I'm Mitch Braley with Racquetball Canada, and really look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thanks very much. Take care and stay safe.